Hamas needs to answer as to why they invaded Israel, slaughtered civilians, went on a horrific massacre, and now they bear the responsibility for what takes place. And I think that anybody who is listening would find that reasonable and would understand that we cannot live next door to a terror organization that has shown and that clearly wants to wipe us off the map.
Major Libby Weiss is a spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, and we can speak to her now. Good morning, Libby.
Thank you. Good morning.
Israel says it's hit 300 targets in Gaza. Where are they? Are they all in the north of that region?
Well, that is where our focus is at this point, and we are continuing to expand operations to dismantle Hamas and to make sure that Hamas is in no position of power to ever do what they did on October 7th again.
And do you also hit in the south as well? Because one of your means of mitigating civilian death is to say, go south if you can, get out of the northern areas. Does that mean that you're not hitting targets in the south?
Well, we have for several days at this point, beyond more than a week, in fact, have encouraged residents to move to the southern part of the Strip. We have identified that that is a safer place for them to be and have identified a humanitarian area. We are, of course, not targeting civilians in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, but understandably, we will find Hamas and we will make sure that they are dismantled anywhere where they pose a threat to Israeli civilians.
But are you hitting targets in these humanitarian areas in the southern bit?
No, in areas where we have designated as humanitarian areas specifically for civilians, we are certainly not striking civilians. We are certainly not striking in that area. But of course, Hamas needs to understand that following October 7th, we need to make sure that we find them. We need to make sure that they no longer have the capability of butchering Israelis as they did on the 7th.
So just be really clear about that then, because this is really important to many people. Are you saying that if there is a designated area of safety in the south, you will not drop bombs on that area that might collaterally kill civilians?
What I'm saying is that we've instructed civilians at this stage to move to the southern part of the Strip, which is a safer place for them to be, in areas that are designated specifically as humanitarian corridors or humanitarian areas. Then, of course, we are not targeting civilians, but we will strike Hamas sites wherever they may be, and we need to do it to dismantle them and to serve the operational purpose of this war.
People will absolutely understand that, but they are not therefore safe areas or humanitarian areas, because you're not saying that you won't drop bombs there, you're saying that you won't target civilians there. And people understand you're not targeting civilians, but civilians are dying, because when you target Hamas fighters, you kill civilians along the way. So what you're saying is you will still drop bombs in those humanitarian areas.
What I'm saying again is we will not target the humanitarian.
I appreciate that.
Certainly. But I have to say the reality of war is a terrible one for civilians everywhere. We understand that this is not a war that we wanted to engage in, and anything that takes place on the ground in Gaza, Hamas needs to answer to that. Hamas needs to answer as to why they invaded Israel, slaughtered civilians, went on a horrific massacre, and now they bear the responsibility for what takes place. And I think that anybody who is listening would find that reasonable and would understand that we cannot live next door to a terror organization that has shown and that clearly wants to wipe us off the map. And they are responsible for the civilian situation within the Gaza Strip. They are the sovereigns in the Gaza Strip.
And so the death of families and children and innocent people is on their hands, not on the hands of the Israeli forces.
Well, I should say first, we never target civilians, and the death of civilians anywhere is tragic. And it's something that we make efforts to mitigate, to minimize as much as possible, in stark contrast to Hamas, who not only don't mitigate it, but target civilians, butcher them in their beds, and drag them as captives across into the Gaza Strip.
The UN says that 1,800 people, including nearly 1,000 children, are missing, feared dead beneath the rubble in Gaza. I know we speak regularly to people from the Israeli government. They don't accept Hamas figures, which say 8,000 people are dead. The UN says that 1,800 people, including nearly 1,000 children, missing, feared dead. Do you accept those figures?
I'm not in a position to accept those figures. Certainly, we don't accept Hamas figures. We can understand that a terror organization that slaughters children and targets children is not particularly reliable in terms of the information that they are putting out. But again, any loss of civilian life is tragic and regrettable. There's no question that as humans, we feel that and we see that.
And do you not have a responsibility to count the dead? I mean, I think I understand that, but should you not count the dead yourself so you can give a number? Because then you can say, we are pursuing this, we regret the cost, but the cost is this. This is the number of civilians we believe have lost their lives as a result of our legitimate attempt to wipe out Hamas.
I mean, I can tell you that the number of civilians that we are able to account for are the civilians on our end who were murdered. We're talking about more than 1,400 who were slaughtered. Those are the numbers that we provide. I'm not in a position to be able to give you specific figures on what is taking place within Gaza. Of course, it is run by Hamas, by a terror organization that controls any information that is coming out of the Strip. But again, any loss of life is tragic, and it is absolutely regrettable. And Hamas bears responsibility for what takes place in the Gaza Strip and for whatever response comes after what they did on October 7th.
One lovely piece of news, there's not been very much nice news, but it's been great news for the family of Ori Megadish that you managed to get her out. I realise there'll be a certain limits to what you can tell us, but is there anything you can tell us about how you managed to rescue her?
Well, first of all, we are thrilled that she is back home with her family, appears to be doing well. For obvious reasons, I won't go into the specifics because we are, of course, concerned and actively working to bring back all of the other hostages who are being held. But it was certainly a small moment of joy for all of us in this country to see her back with her loved ones and her family.
You're engaged in a military operation. Military operations have to include a conclusion. So say you eliminate Hamas as a military, the IDF, have you given advice? Have you received advice? Are you involved in an active conversation about what happens next? What happens when Hamas is eliminated?
Well, our focus is on the military goal right now. There are certainly larger questions that I will leave to the diplomats to resolve, and they're important questions that they are tasked with answering. But our focus very much remains on the military mission, which is to dismantle Hamas and to make sure that they are never in a position to launch acts of horrific terror against Israelis again.
And is that plausible? Do you feel you can take out a lot of them? You can kill many of the people responsible for the terrorist atrocities that you suffered on October 7th, but you can't kill an idea. You can't kill a movement. You can simply target individuals. You're never going to eliminate Hamas, and if that's your military aim, it may well not be possible.
Well, from the military perspective, we have to believe that that is possible because we have no other choice. There is no way for us to currently live with Hamas next door as we have. We saw what happens when they are in a position of power. We saw what they did to our civilians. We saw what they did to those that they slaughtered. We understand what they want, and what they want is for us to be wiped off the map, and that is not going to happen. And of course, we will do whatever we have to survive and to protect our civilians here, and we will continue to do that as a military. We have no other option.
Major Libby Weiss, thank you for joining us today.